And welcome back to the Hannity primaries. We continue now with the former CEO of Godfather's Pizza, Herman Cain. How do you go about with this low name ID, which you're building? I mean, the polls consistently have you pretty much in third place, right?
Yes.
And then there's a group behind you that's creeping up on you. There's a group above that, you know, has a pretty good margin on you. What is your plan? How do you get from where you are today to the top of the heap, win the Iowa caucus, win the New Hampshire primary, win in South Carolina, win in Nevada? How are you going to pull that off?
Well, the first thing is stay away from Bob Beckham. Okay? Then after I do that, because he would drag my name ID down
immediately.
Yeah, right.
Drags mine down. I'm not even running.
Here's the strategy. First of all, two things that you don't hear talked about when they report on the fact that I'm in third place in that Iowa poll. And if you put together all of many of the polls that have been done, I'm still in third place behind, you know, one person that's not even running. It's real simple. One of the Gallup polls, called Positive Intensity, has had me consistently in first place.
I did see that.
Yes.
I did, in terms of the intensity of your supporters.
The intensity of supporters. Oh. And the way they calculate that is how many people strongly favor Herman Cain, and they subtract out the people who strongly do not favor Herman Cain. And when you do that for all of the candidates, I have a substantial lead on everybody, including some of the people that's not running. That says to me, not only am I likable, but my message is resonating. Secondly,
I've known you for years. I've always known you're likable.
Secondly, here's another critical point, which is part of our strategy, which is why we're excited about coming in third. If you look at the story that's been out about Romney and Bachmann virtually being tied in Iowa, fine, that's the story. Here's the story that's not being told. They have twice the name ID of Herman Cain. That simply says, if you put positive intensity plus low name ID, and the more I do old-fashioned retail politics, I can only get better in terms of...
How do you do old-fashioned retail politics in a presidential campaign? You can't shake everybody in Iowa's hand. You can try.
Right.
You can't simultaneously be shaking everybody's hand in New Hampshire and South Carolina. And if you can pull that off,
right,
you not only ought to be you ought to be president of the world. But so you got to raise money.
You got to raise money. Now let's go back to that first question though first. I didn't just start shaking hands and visiting Iowa January 1st. Or January 15th when I announced my exploratory. I have been visiting Iowa, New Hampshire, Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Nevada, different parts of Georgia, South Carolina, since last August. Not necessarily kicking the tires to see if I wanted to run for president. I was visiting all of these states to find out what's on the hearts and minds of the American people. So by the time I got around to declaring my exploratory committee, a lot of the people that I'd already touched, they go, wow, I like this guy. So it's not like I just started. And the other aspect is April 15, 2009, I gave my first Tea Party speech in Las Vegas, Nevada. They were expecting 600 people.
I was in Atlanta.
People.
You were
you were in Atlanta. I was in Vegas. They were expecting 600 people, and they ended up with 2,600 people, and I was one of the speakers. And I tell people, I was speaking at the Tea Party before it was cool. And so it's not like I just burst onto the scene. I burst onto the scene for many of the mainstream media, but not for a lot of the grassroots people out there.
Well, when did you make that decision? Was it then? Did it first pop into your mind, I might want to challenge Barack Obama?
The first time that I thought about running for president was the day he signed the health care reform legislation on March 23rd, 2010. I knew then that this president had one of the most arrogant disregards for the American people that I had ever seen in my lifetime. And that arrogant disregard was based upon the fact that polls had shown that the American people did not want this solution. Many of the American people have figured out we don't have a health care crisis in America. We have a health care cost crisis in America. Secondly, there are patient-centered, market-driven ways to bring down the cost of health care and health insurance, as well as increase accessibility. In fact, legislation was introduced in 2009 that the Democrats ignored. So it was an arrogant disregard for the will of the people. Secondly, an arrogant disregard on the part of this president for the business sector. The business sector is the engine that will drive this economy. And he's shown this disdain for the business sector.
Right. They used their stimulus, $4.5 trillion in new Obama debt.
Yes.
Unemployment record highs, staying there. We don't even count a lot of people that are still chronically unemployed. The economy is a mess. We've got to deal with entitlements. The president's been ignoring it. How do you get to a balanced budget? How long is it going to take Herman Cain if you're the president?
Here's the Herman Cain's approach. And on Wednesday, I'm going to be announcing, coming soon, I'm going to be announcing the fact that I call it the Cain's economic vision. That's what a real economic plan needs, is vision as well as specifics. In the first phase of my economic booster plan, I'm not going to use the word stimulus because it's become a bad word. The first phase is going to include proposing to Congress. They are going to have to send me the legislation, lowering the top corporate tax rate and the top individual tax rate to a maximum of 25%. It happens to coincide with what's in the Ryan's plan, which I totally agree with, but he and I didn't collaborate on that. We're the only country in the world that has not lowered our top corporate tax rate in 15 years. Secondly, take capital gains to zero. I didn't say shave it. I didn't say reduce it. I didn't say compromise to a number to make the Democrats happy. No, take it to zero. Capital gains is a wall between people with money and people with ideas. What do people ideas need? Money. What do they do with it? They start new businesses. That's where many of the jobs come from. Thirdly, repatriated profits. Suspend taxes on repatriated profits. Do those three things. Here's the bow around the package. Permanently. Uncertainty is killing this economy, and it will continue to kill this economy because right now I have businessmen all the time telling me, you know, I would grow, but I don't know what the taxes are going to be January 2030. We don't know.
And you also support a flat tax.
Yes.
Across the board, flat tax, no income tax, no IRS.
No IRS.
Ever.
Consumption tax, which is a national sales tax.
I'm sorry, not a flat, a consumption tax.
A consumption tax.
The national sales tax.
Yes, the national sales tax. That would be phase 2 of my economic booster plan, which would supercharge this economy. Here's one of the most attractive features of that. Now, the demagogues are going to try to lie about it, quite frankly, and basically say it won't work. It takes the decision for how much taxes you pay from the government to the individual based upon your spending.
What would the rate be?
The rate that's in the legislation right now, H.R. 25, is 23%. Now, that being said, let me say this. It replaces all of your federal income tax deductions. It replaces your FICA tax deduction. It collects the same amount of money that we're collecting today.
You say it's revenue neutral. That's always been the big hitch for people. How is it like, for example, you don't pay any income tax.
No.
You don't pay any Social Security tax.
No.
But if you buy a car, you pay 23% taxes.
You pay 23% taxes.
What if you buy a house?
You buy a house. If it's a new house, you pay taxes. If you buy a used house, you don't pay taxes.
Nothing.
Nothing. Think about how that.
Why would anyone want to buy a new house then?
They would want to buy a new house just like they want to buy new clothes, new shoes, and new cars. You can buy used clothes and used cars and new houses today. But when you reach that point in your economic life, you're going to want to buy some new stuff. The other thing is, sooner or later, the used stuff is going to be used up. There won't be any more inventory. Now, here's one of the other most important things. With the national sales tax, which is the national consumption tax, no more IRS, no more spending money to file for compliance. We spend, it's been estimated, $430 billion trying to fill out the forms and stay out of jail. And we're going to raise the same amount of revenue.
And coming up next on the Hannity primary, Herman Cain lays out what his foreign policy would be, and I'll ask him if he's really serious about having a loyalty test for Muslims who would want to work in his administration. That and much more coming up on the Hannity primary.